try to answer your question as simply as possible. So, first of all, metadata is the data that accompanies the real data. So, for example, we're used to see file names, timestamps on files. Those are the most simple metadata that any file can have. But first of all, the first operating system to use metadata extensively was the Macintosh operating system with their source forks. So they started storing any kind of information, like for example the application strings, the menus, the application code, deliveries, and so on, inside different metadata structures. Then the BIOS operating system expanded that idea so the user could create any kind of metadata of any length. And it uses this extensively, for example, so you have an email file and the metadata contains the sender, the subject, and all of that get indexed. So right now, in actual operating systems, we have Windows NT file system that can use metadata, but almost no application is using it. It has always been like so because there is not so much documentation about metadata on the Windows NT file systems. And we also have the Mac OS X operating system that uses extensively the metadata features of the inner file system, but also there's no documentation, no user, no developer knows that that exists. And then we have on Linux and other Unix is starting to appear the extended attributes, but support is scarce at most. So any questions right now? Or everything clear? Okay, what metadata is useful for is for storing things that allow interchanging information. For example, on digital cameras, professional cameras, each manufacturer is using a proprietary format because they store exactly what the camera sees. So the metadata is useful in this case because you can store a simple GPH image, a thumbnail. So any application does not have to understand the file to know what the file is. That's the usefulness of metadata. And I'm getting out of, sorry. So for our open source developers, and here we have a lot of operating system developers, metadata can be a useful way to make more easy the interchange of files, documents, and data, and also can allow the user a better and more interactive way to access the files. Because with metadata indexing, like BIOS started, you don't have to go to your mail application and check all your mails for the mail that your friend sent. You just make a search for mails and put your friend's name. That's the usefulness of metadata. So currently, file systems are that use metadata and index them are using a single file, mostly an SQL file, to index all that metadata. So in the future, all file systems are in trees. So they store the file pointers, the sectors where the files are stored in trees, but they store the metadata in a single file. That's not efficient, that is not performance enough. The future of file systems is coming right now with Windows 8. They are introducing a new file system called Protogon that instead of constructing all the metadata on top of a file, on top of a normal file system, they are constructing a new metadata-based file system. So in Protogon file system, currently this is in beta stage, so things can change. You have files, but you are not accessing files. You are asking for what they call attributes. That's metadata. So instead of saying I want to open file foobar, I want to open the data metadata of file foobar. Mm-hmm. And then the underlying driver will search for that exact attribute inside a tree that's specifically designed to handle metadata.
So with this, how does it relate to POSIX? POSIX, I go open, file, I get a file handle. How do I get metadata out of the standards-based environment.
Where's the word?
There's-
Somebody taking notes, just out of curiosity.
yeah,
Well,
great.
I'm taking a little bit, but I don't know how.
So look, I'll give you a bit of background
Okay,
before
good.
you dive into this. I'm part of the RTEMS project, which is an embedded real-time operating system. And files in embedded systems, even in deep space, is really important. But the file systems in a number of the satellites currently flying, MS-DOS. There's one satellite out there which has a constraint on its file system use that it can only use to 95% because a leading real-time operating system's got this horrible bug. When it gets above 95% use, the file system software just falls over. It actually locks up the satellite.
I'm not
So-
sure I understand
Okay.
whether you...
But this is to do with standardization for us. So standards are important. So file systems open
Yes,
is great.
yes, yes.
So coming back to the context of it all, I don't understand how metadata and standards can work if we're changing the underneath layer of it all. Are we
No,
introducing these standards? How are we managing it?
I will explain
Yeah,
it
yeah.
right now. So what are you asking is you on POSIX just open a file and you get a handle. So what happens right now on the NT file system, on the NT operating system, is that when you open file, you are not opening file, you are opening the data attribute of file. So if you omit this, indeed the system is doing this.
Right.
So this is this can be used to open. You just create a new shell to name the attribute you are wanting to tell you to open, and you get that. And the thing about metadata, the problem is that currently there is not a standard about it.
Right.
So we need a standard. That's absolutely right, because
There are kind of two standard ways to access metadata. One is extended attributes on.
no, I
Unix
mean
side.
the format of the
Okay.
metadata, not how to access it.
Okay.
Because yes, we have this way in ENT, and we have the extended attribute way on Unix and Mac OS X, and we also have the...
But we shouldn't have to worry about how the file system actually stores metadata. Those standard APIs should be able to give it to us, and they do. You know,
Yeah.
based on
Well,
however the file system
it
drives
makes a
it.
real difference for the use case on performance constraints your file system can provide you with. If you're using something which is extremely slow and inefficient, you don't want to use it all the time. It doesn't work.
that's the problem with that Protogon is trying to solve, because we currently have in file system a tree for accessing the main data, and we have to work another tree for accessing any metadata. So we have twice the penalty for accessing a file when we're trying to access a metadata. Protogon is erasing the second tree and storing all in one single tree.
So there's two types of standard parts to this. There's the metadata you get and how you interrogate it, and then how you access it. So there's two parts to the standardization of it. It's what the metadata is, and you know the fields and everything that you can get at, and then there's also how you actually access that
The
to get
API.
it. The API to get it. POSIX, it's a simple open.
Yes.
You know, so there's got to be something else with some other data, and then there is on top of that the standardization of what that data is that you're.
Yeah, but that kind of thing is only matters on the driver, underlying driver. So when you have, for example, the Linux virtual file system, the Linux virtual file system gets a request from the extended attribute programming interface, and then sends it to the driver. And